Hi, I'm Sean Prestridge, Senior Field Applications Engineer for Iar Systems, and I'd like to show you the seamless workflow that you can have with C-Stat and C-Run in your embedded development project. I have a project that's opened up in my embedded workbench, and what I can do is take a look at some of the things that C-Stat can do for me. If I right-click on the project and go to Options, you'll notice that there is a static analysis option, and by selecting the C-Stat checks, I can see which things are enabled for C-Stat to check. Right now I have the standard checks enabled, and I can go through my project and see which ones of these violations could be lurking within my source code. When I go to do a C-Stat check, I have the option of checking the entire project, or I can check just a single source code file. In order to do a C-Stat check, I just right-click on either the project or the source code file, and then go to C-Stat Static Analysis and choose either Analyze Project or Analyze Files. I'm going to analyze my entire project and see what kinds of things C-Stat finds. When I look at C-Stat messages, I can see that there are a few issues that are found. The first one is in the human interface device mouse code. If I double click on each one of the warnings, it takes me to where I am, or where the violation occurred inside of the source code. By inspection of this for loop, I can see that what's going on is that the conditions of the for loop make it where the for loop never actually gets executed, so this effectively renders it as dead code. Now this could be my intention, or it could be a mistake on my part, but in the case of this, since it's dead code, it really doesn't impact my execution, so I'm going to leave this alone for right now. If I go on to the next error, I can see that I have a similar condition where the conditions within the for loop are preventing it from being executed. Also, if I go down to my main function, or to my main.c, I can see that there's a condition where I may be using an uninitialized variable. So if I right-click on that variable and go to the definition, I can see that I actually have not initialized that variable, so I can correct that by simply initializing it. If I go to the next error, you can see that the error is that I'm actually using a negative number, but it's being implicitly cast to an unsigned integer. This could be handled differently by different compilers, so it's better for completeness sake and for quality of source code to explicitly cast this to an unsigned integer, which is what my max packet size is. So I can correct this error simply by converting this to an unsigned integer. Now, if I right-click on my main.c and I reanalyze my file, you'll see that my error messages have disappeared and that I should be ready to download and debug my application. In using C-Run in order to analyze what's going on with my source code as I'm executing, I can go to Project Options, and under Runtime Checking you can see all the different C-Run checks that can be enabled. For this particular application, I've turned all of them on, but you can turn on individual checks at one at a time to be able to run through your test cases to make sure that you don't add an exorbitant amount of code to your application, because it is possible that you could overflow the boundary within your microcontroller if you turn all of them on. So it is possible to turn on just one at a time so that you can run through your test base to see which issues you can detect. I'm going to leave it as it is right here, and I'm going to click Download and Debug. Of course, it recompiles main because I made a couple of changes to main, and this will take just a few seconds for it to download to my target. And you'll notice that I have the C-Run messages as well as the C-Run message rules that are already open within the window. If you don't have those open, you can actually get to them from the View menu by going to C-Run and also Messages and Message Rules. So if I execute my code, you'll see that I get an integer failure. You can see that when I make a conversion from a -1 to an unsigned int, it actually changes the value. In this particular case, this is what I intended. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click and I'm going to add a rule for this specific instance of integer conversion failure. You can also add a rule for any integer conversion failure in the entire source file or header file, or you could add a rule for integer conversion failure for your entire project. In this particular case, I only want to do it for this instance. So now anytime this error occurs when I'm doing my debugging, I have the option to either log it or ignore it, or to do the default action, which is to halt the core. I'm going to leave it as log, and I'm going to continue executing. And next we see a rather serious error because I'm accessing a pointer, or outside of a pointer bound. So as you can see, the bounds on the pointer are to 5C02, but where I'm accessing is 5C04. Now this particular function is setting the address of a USB endpoint, and since I only have a single endpoint with this particular application, I'm probably not going to run into trouble, but it does indicate that I really need to go back and clean up my source code, particularly if I plan to add another endpoint, because this can actually have a deleterious impact on my application. And if I continue executing, you can see that a similar error is caught again, just 2 lines down. And if I execute again, several hundred lines down, I run into exactly that same problem. So this indicates that I need to go in and clean up my code, and it tells me what I need to do. I need to adjust the pointer bound so that it encapsulates the entire memory address space of what I'm using. So as you can see, C-Stat and C-Run used together can actually help you find bugs before they get out into a formalized QA where they count against your release metrics, and it can also help you create more to create better and higher quality products before they're released to your customer. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope you found it useful.